Yeah, Hermes, those in-between steps are scary, but one step I'm not afraid to take is a Q&A video with you all. It's my favorite video of the week, where we answer the questions from y'all in chat as well as the comments from last week's video. We're going to alternate between these two as we do every single week. It's Q&A time, chat. If you guys haven't been here before, you don't know what's going on. We put out a Q&A video every single Sunday where we answer questions from people over at twitch.tv/Lawler, where you guys can drop your questions, kind of skip the queue, or in the comments down below. Let me know what you want to know. And this can be either personal, Rocket League related, whatever you want. And if I see one that allows us to kind of elaborate and talk a bit more about, those are the ones that we'll try to pick. So we get a little bit of everything. We've been doing this well over a year. These are my favorite videos of the week. So we're going to jump straight in and see what we've got. And it's going to start with Hato's Plays. It says, hey, with Kami, Virtuoso, and Realize winning the first APAC regional in dominant fashion, do you think by providing higher level of competition, APAC will be able to challenge at least the likes of OC next season or even late this season? Also, do you think this is beneficial for other teams in NA and EU to move to another easier region to make it stronger? This concept is a little weird to me. I haven't really put too much like personal thought into it. I think the pros are that by those three players going to APAC, it provides more eyes on the region as a whole. I think more people are invested in watching it all together, and them winning also proves that there is a massive gap in APAC versus some of the other regions. And by bringing in a team that is better, it should in theory make the other teams better as well. Some may say that, hey, this person is coming over and they're stealing our spot, but I still think at the end of the day, even with them moving and taking the risk to move, they also still have to perform. And it's a massive risk, a pay cut potential. Like, there's a lot of negatives as well. So I do think APAC should be able to get better, but whether they can challenge the likes of OCE or otherwise, I don't know. I don't know what the development's going to look like. The only time we've really seen minor regions or expansion regions get better is when over time they do get better because they've been exposed to stronger teams. So will we see the heightened sense in just one split or otherwise? I don't know. I honestly don't know. And is it beneficial for teams in NA and EU to move to another region? I think it entirely depends on where you're at. For example, if you took a team like Team BDS, no. Team BDS is a world champ team. They will consistently perform, in my opinion, in Europe. The ability to move to APAC and completely dog on a region is just going to make them worse over time, and they're going to lose a ton of money. So no. But if you have a team like Renegade situation, where the team completely disbands, Kami's left alone, you've got Realize, who's arguably the best player in that region, and Virtuoso, who hasn't done a whole lot in EU, this is an opportunity that could become fruitful. But it's never been done before. I don't know what it's going to look like long term. We've never seen teams move the opposite way and go to an expansion region. We've only seen teams from expansion regions come to the major regions. So I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but I'm excited to see what the development is and if it entices some long term. We've seen in other games where they've had to put restrictions on some things like this, where you can't have a certain amount of international transfers in a season, just to basically make it so like League of Legends NA teams just aren't all people from like Korea and stuff in the better regions. But it is becoming very enticing because the salaries over there are insane. So there may be rules that have to be put in place in the future. That is a possibility. With the move to NA and showing in the fall split, do you think Gen.G can consistently make top 4, even win, and major their rookie season? I will say I was pleasantly surprised by Gen.G's results. I made the joke. I didn't think it was only going to take one event for EU to take over NA. Turns out top 2 in the very first event. Pretty yikes. They went against a very poor performing V1. They looked better against SSG. Details Chrome hasn't shared with me as to why, but he said they looked off. None of that is to discredit Gen.G's performance. Gen.G looked solid, and I think they're only going to get better the more reps they put together. You see the motivation from Jack from tweets. There's a lot of positive about Gen.G. They're feeling good. So I'm excited to see what they do long term, but I think them being a top 8 is no surprise. And once you get top 8, I think anybody in top 8 has a chance to win the whole thing. Depending on how things go on the day, depending on who's winning. The only time I counter that is when First Killer plays the way he did. Because man was averaging like 2.5 goals per game or something ridiculous. It was something insane. So Rocket League is a lot about the momentum, how it comes down on the day. And I think Gen.G has that potential to pop off and surprise some people. So we'll have to see. We will have to see. Any predictions for players who will be insane this season that didn't do extremely well last season? You could talk about the Oxygen squad. Dignitas had some pretty tough results at times. You look at Joria's and what they could potentially accomplish. Archie did okay when he went over to Semper endpoint situation, but like it wasn't anything notable. They got O2'd at Worlds. Still a notable status. I don't know. Oxygen's kind of an interesting one, depending on what you consider like extremely well. I guess it depends on your definition. Over in North America, I think Drees isn't one to definitely keep. Drees is a team to definitely keep your eye on with Dignitas. I'm very interested to see what his career becomes. I talked about this in conversation with chat, where I looked at the history of Drees. He was brought in where he had to try out and fill the shoes of Rizzo, which is an uphill battle. He then had to basically fight for his spot, potentially being let go. He manages to maintain it, and then he gets replaced by Atomic. Then he goes to a tough situation over Envy/Optic, and now he's on a team that, despite being in pretty healthy circumstances and pretty prolific names, I feel like this is the healthiest situation he's been in. Shows these teammates, we're going to build upon each other. It's going to be a positive impact and a collaborative effort. It felt like his entire career was kind of overshadowed by him always having to look over his shoulder. So I think that Drees is a fun one to pay attention to. I also look at Team Axel, that former Oxygen team, and I'm curious to see on what they end up doing. I also hope, speaking of Dignitas, I hope Andy gets some love. That boy's so talented, it never gets enough credit. Let's talk about Shopify Rebellion. Memory's still super underrated. Two-piece being brought in. I think there's some interesting things going on in both regions for sure, in NA and EU. As a former player and current insider, can you tell us a little what happens with prize money from tournaments? Yeah, tournament prize money happens a couple different ways. Usually when you play in a tournament, you have a certain time period, whether it be net 30 days, net 60 days, whatever it may be, that the prize money is supposed to be issued out. Sometimes this is good. Sometimes this is not okay. Late payments are not a surprise in esports. It's pretty terrible. Depending on the contract and depending on how things are signed, determines on how the tournaments are provided. Obviously, you take quite a bit out. Assume roughly half for taxes that are being taken away. And then, depending on what your contract is, some percentage may go to the team. There's a lot of teams that don't take prize earnings. That is a separate thing. Some teams also provide bonuses for results, so that can be an incentive. But it varies quite a bit from team to team and what you sign with your contract. It varies a lot. But most teams nowadays don't take tournament winnings. And if they are, you should probably take a firm look at that contract, because I have some concerns. But most of the case, tournament results, because they're not guaranteed, go to the players. The only time it does is if there's like incentives and other stuff and bonuses and whatever. But is it common at all for players to get a salary from the org as their base pay and only get relatively small bonuses for placements? Again, depends on the contract. Most common is you are given a flat salary, and then from there is certain deliverables or obligations that you're required. Stream X amount of months, do enough interactions, social requirements, whatever it may be. Practice X amount of time, certain requirements like that keep you incentivized. And then some people will also work into their contracts bonuses based on consistency and placements. Bonuses are very popular for coaches as well, because coaches definitely get paid a lot less than their players. And having coaching incentives like, hey, I coached this team to go from said area to next phase. So like, we were a top 16, now we're a consistent top 8. Now we're a consistent major team. Things like that are ways to earn bonuses and stuff too. So I know plenty of teams in the past that have done that. I've had and have seen teams reduce their salary because of their results. So it varies a lot. But always up to the contract. It's from team to team, it changes. Do you think academy rosters for orgs would be a good addition to Rocket League? How can you have academy teams when our pros are already only 15? It's not possible. It's too young of a player base. I personally have a really bad feeling about starting academy teams when players would be like 12 to 13 years old. I think it's a horrible idea. What I personally think should happen is that they should do what Valorant just did, and I've been talking about this for years, change the minimum age requirement to 17. That way, when players are seniors in high school, they can make the decision of, do I take a gap year from collegiate and I start focusing on my pro team? And now, again, think about the differences in age from a 14 to 17, the maturity that comes with it, the, you know, the wisdom, even though 17-year-olds are still pretty dumb. Case in point, was 17 once. I was dumb. But I do think you're a lot more level-headed at 17 than you are at 15. So if you do 17 and then you have academy teams, then it's more potentially viable, I think. And then you throw in a grandfather clause like Valorant did. Hey, if you're 15 by X date, you're still allowed to compete. Retroactive for some of them. But academy teams with players that are allowed to compete at 15, like, it's too young. It's way too young. I just don't see it. I don't think it's healthy long term. I really don't. You already have a bunch of these kids missing school and everything else that comes with it. I don't think it's the right idea. I really don't. Since you're a big anime fan, what would be your dream Rocket League anime collab, and what items would you like to see in it? Ooh, big anime fan. What anime stuff would I like to see come over? Oh, that's tough. I think about the way that like Fortnite's done it, where they have put anime characters as playable characters. They just did the Dragon Ball Z collab. They've also done like Naruto and all that kind of stuff. Rocket League's a little bit tougher. I think you can do like decals and like goal explosions and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know what kind of collab would make sense. Can't do like a custom app. You'd have to find like a unique game mode potentially or something, or like a rings map or something. I don't know. For Rocket League though, if they could find a way to do iconic scenes with like some maps or something, that'd be kind of cool. And then maybe some like decals and aesthetics that they could do, but I don't know specifically. Oh, that'd be so tough. Also, I wish I could have Lawler's anime wisdom. He's watched 100 shows. A lot more than that. Definitely more than 100. Like, significantly more than 100. But yeah, that's tough, man. I don't know how they would implement. Rocket League is tough to do that. Usually they're just like car. Maybe like an Akira collab and do like the first bike in game. I think that'd be super cool. Akira collab and put it in the bike. That'd be kind of cool. I think you'd have to look at anime and be like, what are some iconic vehicles that we've seen, and try to implement them. Stuff to that extent, I think would be the easiest way to do it. Seeing some of the teams compete in RLCS this weekend, which team with a new third, SSG, Moist, Complexity, do you see underperforming when compared to the previous season? Some of these teams opted to find a better player, whereas some were forced to find a new third, and I was curious your view on that. I think Complexity potential, as you guys have heard me talk over the last week or so, I think Complexity has so much potential. SSG's been absolutely killing it. SSG's still top 4. So I don't think it's SSG. Complexity, I think, underperformed based upon what we've seen during the offseason with the roster royale and everything else. And my thought process is that Complexity is like a top 5 team going to majors. Like, they look so good with CRR. They just didn't showcase it. I don't know if it was nerves or what, or maybe they felt the pressure of like, shoot, like, we are this team that everybody's having an expectation of, and we don't. Now we mentally are in the bins. I will say we haven't seen Moist play yet. As of recording this video, we haven't seen Moist play in the main event yet. So I think Moist right now has definitely been underperforming, and that's not necessarily their fault. I think Moist right now just is trying to develop with Astral and see what that looks like, and that is going to take some time to adjust. Astral and Vatira are not the same. While everybody thinks all French are same, not same. Very different. So I'm interested to see on what Moist becomes. I think long term they'll be okay, but I think Moist right now is the easy one to pay attention to out of those 3. But for Complexity, I have very, very big expectations and hopes for that team. I think they look so good. Yeah, Complexity has been bodying everybody in scrims. They look so good. If you guys want a good first-hand look of what Complexity looks like, go watch Complexity versus V1 in the top 16 qual. Complexity looks incredible, man. That's all I'm going to say. Space Station as well. Space Station has been doing very well in scrims also. Yeah, I have to go with Moist. And I think it's going to take time to develop. Do you have any personal favorite casters inside RL Esports and outside of it? I will make this aware. Again, I consider all those like RL Esports and RLCS guys friends. I used to work with them. They were family. Still are. I happily got to work with Turtle and F. last weekend. Love those boys both dearly. Outside of Rocket League, there's a lot of very, very talented people. And I think the easiest answer is look at anybody in Counter-Strike. Most of the Counter-Strike casters are some of the GOATs of casting. I think Counter-Strike in general does a really good job of providing space, time, pacing, all the things that you want as a caster to really make those good moments happen. And that's one thing to say. It's another thing to execute on it. You can look at people like Sponge. You can look at Machine, who I've gotten to work with personally. Just some of the guys that are just god tier commentators. Probably winning casters of the year every single year. Very, very good. There's a lot of really talented broadcast talent out there, but Counter-Strike is almost always, in my mind, some of the best casters we have. They're in all of esports. They're so good. But shoutouts, in my opinion, to Sponge and Machine. Like, I can pull clip after clip after clip and be like, watch this. I like this as our last question. It's a good one from Vaughn. He says, with the first NA regional coming to a close, which team do you think has improved the most? Along with that, which newly transferred players do you think have now been put into the best position to succeed on their own new team? Number one, new team to chance to succeed, Gen.G. Nolly, APAC, and Chronic, I think, are in a position to be very successful. I think those three, given the circumstance, what they were in and where they're at now, and what they are going to build upon, sky's the limit. I think mentality-wise, Gen.G has a very, very good history in front of them. That makes no sense. History is past. In front of them is the future. I think they have a chance to create something special over there. They all feel motivated. I think they all collectively have one goal in mind, and it's to grind and play better and be better and to be rewarded immediately for their efforts with top two. I think it's only going to get better. So I think Gen.G for long term with transfers have a lot of really cool potential. You could also even talk about the APAC with what is it, James Cheese or whatever the heck they're called, with Virtuoso, Kami, and Realize over in APAC. Potential for them to set up for something special. You can even talk about KRN over in MENA. What they accomplished already, knocking down the top dog and Falcons. Those twins gonna take over the league. I'm excited about it. But first NA regional coming to close. Which team do I think has improved the most? I think Team Axel. I think Gimmick and Toasty, although they didn't make a change between those two, that duo is still the same and they look good. Space Station, I think, has shown some pretty good improvement, which a lot of people are going to look at and be like, improvement? They're about the same area. And I say to that, like, still. Shopify, obviously. Dignitas, which was, I think you could technically say, like, Stromboli / Charlotte Phoenix. Optic's a completely different team, so I don't count them. I think Complexity as well. Complexity was a team that I think always had chance to make majors, but I was still going to put them in tiebreakers or like just outside most of the times. Now I look at Complexity, as you guys have heard me talk about even in this video. I think Complexity is like a top 5 shoo-in. I think they look so good. I think they'll probably be fighting for like a 4 or 5 spot. I think they'll be one of like the handful of teams that fights for the 2 spots at the tail end. But yeah, I really like Complexity right now with CRR. I really do. So I think there's a lot of really fun developments here this season already, and we're only, you know, technically a week in. So a lot of long-term things to pay attention to. I'll try to keep breaking these down and do my best. If you guys want to hear me talk about more of this stuff and provide more of my thoughts and opinions, you can always do so. Come hang out on the stream, twitch.tv/LAWL. We do this every week, every day, essentially, is a live Q&A. You guys pretty much decide what we do. So come hang out with us every day, but Tuesday and Sunday. Fridays are also going to be kind of hit and miss, just due to the fact of having to cast day one stuff. So I'm very much so excited to see things. And Welch, I agree with you. Complexity didn't pay me anything to make these claims. That's just how confident I feel about them. And NA is not guaranteed for anyone, but I was also taught to not sit on the fence, to make bold claims. And if you're wrong, so be it. I'm wrong, and I can own up to it. So heck, fence sitting, make some bold claims, and hopefully they pay off. And if not, we go next. But that is going to do it for today's Q&A video. As always, comments down below if you would like to ask them or come over on the stream. And if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you guys like the comments that you see, as well as the video. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.